Good morning. I'm Michael Del Piano. Today we're going to be interviewing Sergeant Michael Preputnik, Sr. It's the 7th of January 2005. The cameraman will be Derek Pimento. I'll be conducting the interview. We're at Rome Free Academy. Good afternoon. I'm Michael Del Piano. We're going to be interviewing Sergeant Michael Preputnik, Sr. today at Rome Free Academy. Could you please state your name and branch of service?
My name is Michael Preputnik. I was in the Army Air Corps, U.S. Army Air Corps.
Where are you from?
Freeland, Pennsylvania.
How'd you come about enlisting into the Army?
Well, when Pearl Harbor was attacked, I was still in high school yet, and the draft naturally was being imposed, so I decided to enlist. Because I enlisted, I was able to pick my own branch of service that way. Because I enlisted. Had I waited for being drafted, it would have been a different story entirely.
How great was the attack on Pearl Harbor? Like, how much did it influence your decision to?
Well, being as young as I was more surprised than anything else, and naturally, somebody hurting us like that, you get in a bad mood, you know, as far as negative toward the people who did it. And naturally, as I said, that they're talking about drafting people right away, which was an emergency situation. So I decided to go ahead in Wilkes-Barre, Pennsylvania, and enlist. I did get a deferment. I enlisted in March 1943. I had a deferment until February of 1944 when I went on active duty.
Was your family and your loved ones in support of your enlistment?
Well, just my mother and all. I wasn't married at the time.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't get married until after World War II.
Where was your training?
Well, basic training was in Greensboro, North Carolina. After basic training, I had to wait for 30 days before I got an assignment to a gunnery school. Prior to that, though, I was in New Cumberland, Pennsylvania, too. Well, that's where they did the initial interviews and so forth, and testing for pilot and navigator and so forth. Then I went to Greensboro, North Carolina, and then finally I got my assignment to Fort Myers, Florida. That's where I did my gunnery training, and also turrets.
So what type of training did you do for this, to be a nose bomber?
Well, it wasn't a question of training for being a nose bomber, it's a question of being familiar with turrets that we ride in, and also the weapons, the 50 caliber machine gun. In fact, that was 90% of the 50 caliber machine gun. We had to learn to field strip it, put it back together again, and detail strip it and put it back together blindfolded. So we had our training up until that point toward that end.
What type of training did they give you to mentally prepare you for the war?
Really, at that time, not too much. The thing they're concerned about is our health, physically fit, and also I was able to, since I went into active duty on the 14th of February, 44, I didn't graduate high school at that point. However, my scores were up high enough in my studies and so forth that my diploma was issued to my mother while I was overseas. I was in training to go overseas.
Did you feel that you were ready mentally for war when you went over?
I think I was angry enough. That's all about it takes, you know.
Once you completed your training, where were you sent overseas, and when?
Well, first we left, when I left Fort Myers, Florida, I went home on leave for a few days, and then from there I went down to Mitchell Air Force Base, Mitchell Field, Long Island, and that's where I met the crew, and we were supposed to take an aircraft from there and fly over. However, the aircraft we were supposed to get was not prepared yet, so they sent us over back over. And we went to Italy.
What was your job overseas? What did you do?
I was a member of a bomber crew 396, and we flew on B-24s, B-24 bomber, and I was a nose gunner. And that's all we did. We were at war, and we trained for this, and the only thing we did there is fly our missions. Visualizing that, well, picture yourself, You're a member of a flight crew. You're scheduled to do a mission. You go to briefing. You find out what your target's going to be, and that's where you fly. Well, the first mission, you're scared, and I mean it. And after that, you figure, well, I may not come back. And so you just have a, if it's going to happen, it's going to happen attitude, you know.
How does a person overcome that fear?
Well,
to be able to do their job?
There's a lot of things we did, I guess, but one thing that I did is, like I say, I was a motion picture projectionist by trade. And I used to run the movies at night for the crews when I was available. And it was on 16mm film. So I did something on the side to take my mind off it. But not only that, but because I liked it. I was able to do something, keep busy.
Was it nice to know that you were the person that gave the other soldiers entertainment while they were there?
Yeah, I imagine it was. I felt good about it, really. And I didn't mind. I said, what else could I do? What else can I go?
Mm-hmm. What exactly does a nose-turret do?
Well, the turret itself is, as you can see in what I showed you in pictures, it's a unit of its own, independent of the aircraft. It's electrically operated. I had two hands here to control it. Mm-hmm. My trigger fingers are right there. And where should I turn? To turn whichever I want to go, or up or down. Mm-hmm. And in the front, I had about a 3-inch bulletproof glass that rolled up and down with me when I directed my guns to go up or down. So did the glass.
Did you incur any injuries during these combat missions?
No, I did not. I was very fortunate. In fact, our whole crew was fortunate, except the co-pilot and the bombardier and the navigator. And this happened when we first got over there, indoctrination to the area, and they had to fly with another crew to get familiarized with what the situation was. Mm-hmm. And this only involved the pilot, co-pilot, navigator, and bombardier. Well, they flew on different aircraft as crew members, and they were briefed on it, but each one of them, on their return, one had to ditch in the Adriatic Sea, otherwise they couldn't quite make the base. The other one was hurt in flight, and the co-pilot and pilot worked out pretty good.
What's daily life like during war?
Well, like I say, I was just turned 18. I wasn't much worried about it. I was worried about the first mission or any other subsequent mission, that maybe I won't come back. But other than that, I kept myself busy doing other things. And in addition to some training that we did get, we had to be updated on our training as well while we were over there. But mainly I kept myself busy with movies and whatnot. And so the other crew, they did their own thing. I lived with the 6 of us, the 6 of the enlisted men lived in one tent, and the officers lived in another place. And when we first got there, we got the tent, they said, there's your quarters. We had to get us a pot-belly stove and all that, because we got there in the wintertime, and it was cold. Muddy, cold.
How do you heat a tent like that? Is there any way?
Well, we made we got a 55-gallon drum and all that, and able to get the welding shop and get the thing cut down to size, and we made a stove out of it. And we put in fuel oil, burnt fuel oil. You used to get that thing red hot sometime. But we had it right in the center of the tent with a pipe for exhaust.
If there was any free time to do something, what would
well, we could go to visit maybe Rome, Italy, or Foggia, which was fairly close by. And we were located, our base, Pantanella Air Base, was located near the heel of the boot. You know, Italy is shaped as a boot. And we're about maybe halfway from the East Coast in, stationed there.
What type of aircraft did you fly on while you were
The
stationed?
B-24, Liberator bomber. It's big right here.
Did you ever fly on any other type of aircraft, or that was that?
Well, when I was in training, I flew on B-17s, and just to go up in the air and shoot at the windsock.
How close were you with the rest of your unit?
Well, we were close because we lived all in the same tent. The enlisted, like I said, the officers used to come down and keep warm in our tent, more or less. But at that time, you were segregated from the officers. NCOs and officers were segregated. except when you flew.
Would you consider them, were they like your family?
Only more or less, I'd say. It made us feel happy about that. And we had a good crew, a good pilot. In fact, he was well experienced before. Prior to going overseas, he flew B-24s on training missions for navigators and bombardiers in the States here, so they could get their timing. So he was well familiar with the aircraft, along with he and the engineer. We had no problem.
Yeah. How do you and your crewmates, how did you guys feel about the enemy during the war? Did you have any kind of empathy for them because they're in the same situation as you?
Well, they're in the same situation, but they're the ones that caused it, is the way I felt about it. And we had a negative feeling against them, yes, definitely.
Because of the Pearl Harbor attacks, did you want to get stationed into the Pacific Theater, or did you just want to be part of the war effort?
Actually, Germany wasn't just as much a threat to us then as the Japanese. Only the Japanese did it underhandedly, you might say. So I wasn't much concerned where I went, as long as I went.
All right. Now, while you were over there, did you have any type of interaction with the Italians while you were there?
Well, maybe when we went on leave, when we did get leave, you had... we met one family, I believe, and we were able to go up to their home to have spaghetti and meatballs. And the thing that impressed me the best is you sat at the table, and the first thing you know, the mother would come around and she put a bib on you. It's like, eat. They don't do that here.
So you were treated pretty well then?
Oh yes, we had no complaints about the bib. However, mostly like anywhere else, like we had to watch out security-wise, because you had people that even though they were Italian, that sided with the Germans. See? And it's very easy to get on those bases at that time. See? So in fact, there's one instance about halfway through our tour there where our personal equipment shack was burnt down. Well, the personal equipment shack is where we kept all our flying gear for high altitude flying and so forth. And we had to borrow from another squadron to get our mission out.
What person or people do you remember most from your service during World War II, and why?
Well, mostly the enlisted crew that I attended with, you know. We got to more or less be like personal friends after a while. After 37 missions, or even prior to that. We were all in the same boat and faced the same problems. And I did favor one man, who was the ball turret gunner. He and I got along well, very well together. And in fact, after the war, we didn't see each other for about maybe 40 years or so. Well, our tail turret gunner, contacted me first after all that time. Then from there on in, we blossomed up and we had a reunion, an annual reunion ever since then.
What experience left its greatest impression on you from your
During that time?
During that time.
I really don't recall any particular experience. Actually, the way it was set up and the way we flew our missions, you really didn't have much time to think of anything else but. There's also another thing I might explain. I didn't fly two of my missions with my crew. I flew with another crew because they couldn't replace it, get another nose gunner, and I had to go pick them like that. So I flew two missions without my crew.
Now, you've mentioned to me before that on one of your missions, you had to make an emergency landing.
Yes.
And
that was
who did you encounter in this emergency landing?
After that, that was our third mission. Let me explain one thing here. The aircraft that we flew on, we considered a sortie, okay? So this was our sortie, our third sortie, but our fourth mission. Now why I say this is, though we flew off on a mission, okay, if it was 8 hours or longer, or if we had to hit another target or another target, sometimes we got credit for one sortie, we get credit for two missions, okay? That's how that works out. So the primary thing, the sortie is nothing more than the aircraft configured to fly to perform a mission. And we perform that mission by flying over the target and bombing it and getting it out of there. That's the mission. The sortie is the aircraft and the crew on it, okay? That's how that goes. So, would you repeat your question now so I can get back to it?
You encountered a squadron that you were very surprised about.
Well, yes, that was because it was a fourth mission over Linz, Austria, okay? And we were pretty well shot up. In fact, prior to even leaving the target, we lost 2 engines. Not at the one time, at all. And as we peeled up and tried to keep up with the rest of our squadron, we couldn't do it. So we kept falling back. And we crossed the Adriatic, and we were about to, in fact, we were losing about 200 feet a minute at this time, going down. And we were getting ready to bail out. But the pilot said, no, we're not going to bail out. He said, we're going to find someplace. So he ordered me back into my turret. And I scanned the area, and I seen something like, I don't know, something metallic glistening. It's because it was just about that time of day where the sun was out or something like that. And anyway, it happened to be a runway. So he said, I'm heading for that, and he did. We didn't know where we were going. We didn't know what was there, but we come to find out is, you heard of the Tuskegee Airmen?
Mm-hmm.
Well, that was their base, the 322nd Fighter Group. And as we hit the ground, and we were rolling down the runway, our number 2 engine cut out. And by the time we got to the other end, the other engine cut out. So we actually tied up the runway at the end of it, and they had fighters coming in. They were the red tail fighters, the red tails. If you see the movie Tuskegee, I mean, it pretty well depicts what it was all about.
How surprised were you that it was the Tuskegee Airmen that were there?
Well, like I say, we never knew they were there. This was the surprise. In fact, I don't think any of our crew knew it. We were very much surprised to see these men coming up in these jeeps, all black. Okay? That's the first time I've seen a black person since I left home. And I was a little bit shook up about it, you know, I guess. But I'll be doggone, the tent that they signed me to, they got along fine. In fact, they had a half a drop tank there in their tent. I said, well, what's that doing here? He said, that's our bathtub. He said, do you want to take a bath? And I said, I sure do, because I haven't taken a bath in God knows, I don't know how many weeks.
Now, when I went to your home to pick up the materials, you had lots of things about the Tuskegee Airmen there. Mm-hmm. Why are they such an impact on you?
Well, because we landed at their base, and because they treated us so well, and because the negativeness toward the black people, and because of that impressed me that I don't see what people were complaining about. I couldn't be treated better. You think I was one of them? And that goes for the rest of us, because we were in different tents. We were not in the same tent. Wherever there was space, that's where they put us that time. And we were there only for about 5 days. Then we had to leave.
So now, does that change your whole thinking towards black people?
That's why we go back to Tuskegee, Alabama, every year on a reunion.
So, when did your tour of duty end in the European theater?
We got back here, I believe, in April or May, and we went to a repo depot, replacement depot. And at that time, the war was still going on in the South Pacific, and they're getting ready to ship us out to get training on another aircraft. But fortunately, the A-bomb was dropped, and that changed the whole scenario. Then I was scheduled to go to, I ended up at Columbus, Mississippi, awaiting assignment for discharge, because I indicated I wanted to get out. And while I was waiting, I was running movies there that night and so forth, so I kept myself busy that way. Then I went up to Richmond, Virginia, and was discharged there. So by about November or so of that year, 44, I got discharged, went home, and I decided to get back into motion picture projection again, civilian. That lasted about 11 days. I was right back in. I re-enlisted.
How happy were you to be back in America?
Very happy, very happy. You would never realize how some people that you see, even while I was overseas in Italy, kids, in our mess hall where we ate, we had 5 or 6 garbage cans out here for garbage and also where you wash your utensils and you went to your tent. And the Italian people were standing there waiting for food, and they never even hit the garbage can. They'd grab it and go. When you see things like that, and little kids, the same thing, it sort of tears you up a little bit.
Do you remember the first thing you did when you were back in America?
First thing I did was after lunch, and after I got with my mother and father-in-law, but I went to see the man that taught me motion picture projection. Okay, because he was a favorite friend of mine, and actually the way he did that is he really took a chance on his job because it was a union-operated theater and so forth, and I wasn't supposed to be up there getting training. And what he'd do is he'd break down he gave me a projector head on 35 millimeter. You got your sound head and projector head and so forth. And he sent me into a room in the back. He said, I want you to take that all apart and then put it back together again, which I did. Then before I got to put it back together, he said, well, why don't you go out and get me some ice cream or something like that? And I did. I was a head usher in the theater at the time. And I came back, and what he did, he just mixed everything up, because I had everything all lined up. You know, I was going to put it back together again. He just tore everything. And I didn't get out of there until about 3 o'clock in the morning. I'll never forget that. But I got it back together again. Because it wasn't just putting it back together again. In a projector, you have what they call an intermittent movement. Just pull down 1 frame at a time. 1 frame at a time, see? And then your shutter comes up and blocks out the light when this is happening on, so you don't see these streaks on the screen, see? Well, that has to be timed. You have to time your shutter with the intermittent movement. So that as the shutter comes up to block off the thing, the frame is starting to come down.
On your return, how were you treated by your fellow Americans? Did you have like a hero welcoming when you came?
No. We came in and we landed in Connecticut. It was Bradley Field, I believe. And from there, we dispersed. It wasn't anything like you see in New York City and all that thing. Well, see, we flew back on our own airplane. That's what I meant to tell you, that we flew back from overseas. We didn't go back by boat. See, going there, we went by boat. Coming back, we flew back. In fact, we flew back in a brand new B-24, just out of the factory.
So, what made you decide to re-enlist after you just experienced the most gruesome war that the world's ever seen?
Like I said, I was trying to get back into becoming a motion picture projectionist and join a union and all that. And I was a member of the union, you might say, but I was on a probationary period otherwise to see how well I did. And naturally, at that time, the film they used was nitrate film. It wasn't the safety-based film like it is today. Nitrate film is just like a gunpowder. If it stops just a second in front of that arc light, it'll go up in flames. Well, that required 2 people in the booth, in a projection booth at all times. Well, I went to this one theater in Hazleton, Pennsylvania, Feely Theater at that time. And I had to get up to the booth, and got crowded out, and there was a guy up there. He familiarized me with the area, what was on. Then he went downstairs, and he started shooting breeze downstairs, and I was running the show. I said, no, this is not for me. I said, I don't need this. So I just gave it up, went into the service, got myself assigned to Mitchell Field, in work, motion picture projection, the best equipment you can ask for in the world. That's one reason why I did that.
Did you ever have to go back into combat during your re-enlistment?
Well, yes. I was stationed in areas where the combat was going on, but I didn't fly in combat after the war.
Where were you stationed? Did you have to go to Korea or places like that?
Yeah, I went to Udon, Thailand, and I was in Germany. Well, this is all during peacetime too, you know. And a few other places that I haven't even think about. These tours that I took were 3- and 4-year tours. otherwise.
How long did your second service last for?
30 years, 10 days, and 10 months.
So you became a career military man?
I sure did. Yes, it did.
Looking back now on your career, how does that make you feel that you made the United States military your life?
I think it was about the best life. It was very challenging at times and all that. But the more promotion you made, the more responsibility you had, and you had to learn to accept this. And there's always, they're really dead set on education and training and so forth. You know, it's constant training and whatnot. And you did have problems, but in the beginning I was in what they call the special services section, motion pictures and stage shows and all this good stuff. But then after that, I got to where I wasn't getting promoted too much. It wasn't that important, I guess. So I decided to train in aircraft maintenance. And I ended up being second in my class, and I was offered a job to be an instructor. And I told the head instructor, I said, no, I wouldn't have that. He said, why not? I said, you imagine that, me meeting up with guys like me coming in to get instructed, what a hard time you guys put up with. No, I didn't want to be part of it. But no, I just wanted to get out on my own more or less.
So how long did you work as
Until I retired.
Aircraft maintenance?
Did
Did you stay doing the motion picture things also on top of that, or?
No, at times I did, yes, once in a while, but not, it couldn't happen to me, because it was a different scenario. At first, when I got in, after I got out of aircraft maintenance school, I got to be a crew chief on KC-135, and then you never were home, you're flying all the time, so you could never do that. In fact, a lot of times, I went on one mission to deliver some tires to Guam, I believe it was, and I went to work that morning. I was in SAC, Strategic Air Command, and I called my wife in Guam. She didn't know I went there. Took off from, I was stationed down at Biggs Air Force Base, Texas, and that's how it was, but I enjoyed it, and it was a good life. Then as I went up in rank, I got more responsibility, and I had to give up the crew chief and go in flight chief, and then branch chief, and right up the line.
What was the highest rank that you ever held?
Senior Master Sergeant.
So, did you go over to the Air Force once it became the Air Force?
Yes.
Or?
Well, see, because I was in the Army Air Corps, even in peacetime, when we got back from overseas, I was still in the Army Air Corps, and I just fell right into it.
So, do you consider yourself a member of the Army or the Air Force?
Either one.
Doesn't matter?
I like them both. It's, you know, it's what you make it. I mean, everybody has a negative attitude about the service, and I don't know why. It's like any job you go to, even in civilian world. If you don't hack it, you're going to have a rough time. In the military, if you go ahead and do what you're told to do, and get the job done, and go right with it, and keep a positive attitude, you won't have any problem. You're going to meet problem areas, naturally. I admit that. It's no bed of roses, but it's a good life. Good life. And they give you every, especially today, they give you every opportunity as far as education is concerned.
How'd you end up in Rome?
Oh boy. Well, let's see. In Rome, New York. Well, when I was stationed at Mitchell Air Force Base, Long Island, I met my wife there. We got married. I was still in special services and all that. And actually, when I went to aircraft maintenance, she was already my wife. And we went from one place to another. But when I went overseas, they gave us what you call a dream sheet with a number of bases on it you pick on that you would like to be transferred back to when your tour duty was done overseas. And I always picked Griffiths Air Force Base. And I always got it. Do you know why? Because here we have a lot of snow. People don't want Griffiths Air Force Base. They want Orlando, Florida, something like that. Say. And fortunately, one of my assignments was Orlando, Florida, and I couldn't wait to get out of there. But most of the time, when I requested reassignment, I requested Griffiths Air Force Base. That's how I got it.
What was it about Griffiths that made you always want to come back?
4 seasons. It was winter. I like winter. I like the area. I didn't particularly care for the South too much because of the attitude toward the black people. In my experience with the black people, I couldn't accept it. I couldn't see, why? Why is this going on? See, they're some of the nicest people you ever want to meet. Most of these people who were in the Tuskegee Airmen were officers, some were already in service, but some of them were doctors, and some were lawyers, and things of this nature. And he went on in. And I said, like I say, that was the best kept World War II secret, that they were even over there. They were stationed at Ramitelli, Italy, which is the northern part of Italy, way up north.
How proud were you when the Air Force was integrated? To know that?
I was glad to see it come. Really, I'll tell you, between you and I lived in Freeland, Pennsylvania. It's a small coal mining town, okay? And we didn't have this thing about racial segregation and whatnot, or integration, whatever you call it, segregation. And when I got in the service, I first met my first black person. It was in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania. I was trying to get to New Cumberland, PA, and he showed me how to get there. That's the first time I met a colored man, a black man. I didn't see no difference. His skin was different. And pigmentation, but other than that, I think the people are very low. We have the same thing on the other side. If you want to go, you can compare it either way. You know what I'm talking about.
Mm-hmm. So, how many of your crew members do you still keep in touch with?
Okay, right now we were a 10-man crew. Okay, the pilot, he's deceased. Okay, co-pilot is still living. His wife just died recently, but he's down at Tennessee, Copper Hill, Tennessee, where he lives now. And the bombardier, he's still living. And navigator, he's still living. He's in Connecticut. Bombardier's down in San Antonio, Texas. And the navigator, he had a stroke some years ago, and he gets in there, but he has a bad habit. When he wants to talk to you, he says in a hurry to get the words out so you don't forget. Or when he writes your letter, you can hardly transcribe it. But other than that, he's got his marbles. But they haven't been coming on our reunions. Well, let me continue on. Then our waist gunner, he was deceased, and the radio operator, we never did locate him. And the ball turret gunner, he is still living. He lives in New Jersey now, Belmar, New Jersey. And the tail turret gunner, he died not too long ago, but he's the one that got us together in the first place. And that's about it.
Where do you all meet together?
Well, I started at my friend's house, the ball turret gunner who lives in Jersey, and then we go from there.
Or you just go to houses?
Yeah. Well, what we do, we get together, if we're going to have a reunion like we down at Tuskegee, Alabama, well, we meet down at Tuskegee, Alabama. But I go to his house and we drive down there, see? And the other crew members come in from the other places. However, right now it's only he and I who do any of it now. Because the others are, except for the bombardier. He might come occasionally.
Do you keep in touch with any other Tuskegee soldiers also? Now, these men that you just met over there that surprised you, they became personal friends of yours after?
No, actually, after the war, well, some of them were shot down and all that. So, no, as far as the black races, black people are concerned, when the war was over, the first time we ever met them, like I said, is after the war. We were going back to Tuskegee, Alabama for reunions. But the way we came about that was the ball turret gunner, Conley, his name is Frank Conley. At that time, he met one of the Tuskegee Airmen in Philadelphia area. And from that point on, it blossomed out to go to Tuskegee. Most of our reunions prior to that were held wherever we wanted to pick a place. Maybe we'd hold it in the area where the co-pilot lived. Maybe we planned for where the bombardier lived, or where we lived. relatives. But then after that, once we got with the Tuskegee Airmen, it's been every year since about, we've been back to us about, since '91.
Now, you volunteered twice for the U.S. military. How much did it pain you to see things like draft dodgers and people trying to avoid going to war and being?
It paid me very much, I'll tell you. I just can't see that. I have no pity on something like that. I don't see why they do things like that. There's no reason for it. Just do your job. That's all you gotta do. Military is no more dangerous than the job that you might be working on in a factory, for crying out loud. How many lives have been lost in factory blow-ups here and there and so forth because of malfunctioning equipment or leaks in fuel systems or something like that? You read about it all the time in the paper. So what's the difference? At least you know one thing for sure, that when you join the service, you know you're training to protect this country. Okay? Well, you know you're going to eventually be shot at or something's going to happen. So you accept that. That's all it is. Now, if you were to join the police force, what's the difference?
What part of being in the service are you the most proud of?
By part, what do you mean by part?
Like, when you look back on your career,
Okay.
what are you the most proud of?
I've met a lot of good people while I was in the service. But what makes me the proudest of it is when I was assigned to a flight crew. It's like a family, okay? Because you're with the same people all the time. And you share the same problems and so forth all the time. Even though it was for a short period of time, but it covers a whole lot. Even after the war was over and after I re-enlisted and so forth and went on toward my 30 years, I met a lot of good people, don't get me wrong. But I always remember the flight crew.
Now, you had a 30-year career. How can you rank up your service with other events in your life? Like, how does the service rank up?
Number one. Why? I've had a lot of experience. I've traveled a lot. I have a wonderful family, 5 sons. And they never went to want anything or need anything. I knew where my check was going to be depending on how I did my job and the attitude toward my job. And just flat as getting the job done.
Do you have any advice for someone that's going to look into joining the military now?
I'll say the same thing I told my son, one of my younger sons that was going into the Army, or wanted to enlist. And I told him, I said, what you want to do first is go talk to a recruiter in each branch of the service. See what they have to offer you. And then you make your own mind up. I'm not going to tell you you have to join this or you have to do this. You have to think for yourself. And that way there that I figured that if they practice this and give the service a chance, and your initial enlistment will be for maybe about 3 years or maybe 4 years or something like that. But the important thing is that if you're going to pick something like that, take it serious. Don't just say I have to do this because I want to please my folks, I want to do this. Get in and do your job and get ahead. And there's no reason today why a person can't get ahead and go right on up. In fact, there have been a lot of enlisted personnel who went right into the officers branch. In fact, I had a chance one time and I didn't go. I could have gone to officers training school. I turned it down. I like the enlistment man. It depends what you want to do. But it's not a bad life. You hear a lot of stories about it. But if you're going to base your life on stories you hear, you're never going to get anywhere, really. You've got to think for yourself.
Would you like to say anything to the men and women that are currently now serving in Iraq, Afghanistan, and all the other places around the world?
They signed up Let me start with the military service, as I know it from back in '49, so it became an all-volunteer force. Every person that's in the service today is volunteering to come in. He's not drafted. He's not forced to come in. When you sign your name on a line, you're saying you're going to do your job. And they're doing their job. And they're doing it well. Okay. I really appreciate what they're doing because it's making my life a little bit safer. And I hope everybody else thinks the same way. Instead of ridiculing what's going on, stick up for them. The men are doing what they're told to do. When they join the service, they realize this. They enlisted voluntarily, and they're doing their job because they're told to do this job. This is what it's for. In fact, this is what they're in the service for, to protect this country. And somebody better start again and take it serious. Because between you and I really don't envy you coming up into this war now. You have a rough road ahead of you. But how would you feel if everybody around you didn't want to go in the service? Think about that. Does that answer your questions?
Mm-hmm. Is there anything that you want to say before we conclude?
Well, I'm happy that you asked me. I didn't prepare myself as well as I should have, but I hope that it'll do some good somewhere. Sometimes I get carried away and I get too involved, but there is a lot. This is the way I feel about it, and I made my life, based my life around the military, with the exception of 11 days. So I think that one day that I did that one movie changed my whole life, because I seen what I was going to be put. Since I was just an up-and-coming projectionist at the time, you get the worst jobs that they can hand to you, more or less, if you get right down to that, say. And when I seen this happening, I said, I got to get out of here. There's something better I can do. So I gave the service a chance.
Well, thank you very much for your interview.
Okay, you're welcome.